Today, we're going to talk about how nonprofits can get $10,000 a month of free ad spend on Google using something called the Google Ad Grant. And we have one of the leading experts in these Google Ad Grants whose name is literally Grant. So that's how you know it's amazing. We got Grant Hensel here. He is the founder of Nonprofit Megaphone, specializing in Google Ad Grants for nonprofit and charity organizations. He currently has over 800 active clients, a team of over 60 people. Grant, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks, Aleric. Yeah, we love it. And the funny thing is, I didn't even realize when I founded Nonprofit Megaphone 9 years ago that it was so funny that my name was Grant. People started making that joke like 3 years in. And anyway, yeah.
It's great. Your destiny.
It's fun. Yeah.
I love it. Well, we're going to dive into some amazing things today on this podcast. And whether you are a candidate for Google Ad Grants or not, this is going to be a really fascinating podcast to listen to because it's going to talk about how Google is going and giving back to these different charities, nonprofit organizations, and whether that applies to you. Maybe you're an agency and that could apply to a specific type of person to connect them with Grant and the work that he does. Or maybe this is somebody that you know. Maybe you come across somebody who is in need of being able to get additional support for their charities. This is going to be a really great podcast to listen to. So, Grant, what is the Google Ad Grant program? How does it work? I'd love to hear more about that process.
So it's just like you said, the Google Ad Grant is a program for 1C3 nonprofits that Google provides that gives them access to $10,000 of credit to spend on ads in Google search every month forever. There's no time limit on the program. The program's been around for over a decade now, and it's just $10,000 a month over and over again to help people reach their audience that might be searching for them in Google search. So it's not the other Google platforms. It's not YouTube or display ads, but if someone is searching in the Google search interface, nonprofits can run ads there that show up as text ads at the top of the page and at the bottom of the page as well, depending, but show up as ads that they can reach people who are Googling for things related to the work they do. And when people click on those ads, they're taken to the nonprofit's website. And it's just a wonderful way to reach a new and larger audience if you are a 501c3 nonprofit.
That's really awesome. And we're going to dive into all the ins and outs of this. And especially if you're watching this now and you are a 501c3, this could be one of the most valuable podcasts you listen to this entire year, just because of it's free money, right? There's not many things that are, in life that are truly, that free money. And this is one of those things that Google is going out and they're looking to do good and give back. And so we'll talk about the structure of these ads, how Grant, helps, set these up, like what some of these things look like, some of the best practices, do's and don'ts. But I think one of the things that could be really valuable to understand is this is legitimately giving $10,000 a month. So let's say somebody 10 years ago had signed up, they would have gotten over $1 million over the course of those years.
Yeah, 120 grand a year. So it would have been 1.2 if it was 10 years ago. It's good.
Wow. And so how many people do you see get approved? Now, I know some of the answer to some of these questions, but I think people will be shocked. What percentage of people that have a legitimate, 501c3 get approved for the Google Ad Grant, would you say?
Virtually 100%. It's very different from normal grant programs where, 100 people apply and then maybe 2 people are selected. The way the Google Ad Grant works is that if you are a 501c3, you can't be a hospital or a school. And it's actually available in dozens of countries. So if you're the equivalent legal status as a nonprofit in many other countries as well, you have to have a website, obviously. The website has to have an SSL certificate installed. Like people have to be able to make a secure connection to your website, which 99.9% of websites have. And you have to have meaningful content on your website. It can't just be like one page and there's nothing there. There has to be information for people to see. But if you fulfill those requirements, you are basically always going to be approved for the Google Ad Grant, which is deeply underappreciated. It's getting there. Adoption is definitely getting there, but it's, in our view, the biggest opportunity within the marketing world for all nonprofits, as long as you're trying to reach a large audience. And it's a great first step into the digital marketing world as a charity.
I love it. And we're going to talk about all of, the different best practices you see, some of the different results you see, how you go about setting up some of these campaigns shortly. Also, I'm curious about what that application process looks like. What are some of the traps people fall into? But before we get into that, it's kind of crazy to me that there would be this massive opportunity that practically 100% of people that apply the right way, which you're going to talk about, are able to get, based on everything you're sharing. How many people actually know about this? Because you would think that all the nonprofits would know about it. They'll be calling their friends and talking about it. But I think that there's people that definitely, I know, I've brought it up, and I've mentioned you to different people, and they maybe have heard of it, but they didn't really know it was actually free money that Google's giving. So how many people actually are aware of this in your experience?
A decent number of people. It's interesting. So over the last decade, people have definitely become more aware of it. One of the nuances about the ad grant, because people are always like, "What's the catch? Like, is this just like shooting fish in a barrel?" The difference between an ad grant account and a normal paid ads account for a nonprofit is that Google enforces a lot of rules on how you spend the money in an ad grant account. And so what's interesting is that the average nonprofit that gets the Google ad grant only spends $800 a month of their credit, which is interesting. Our average client, I think, spends like $8,700, $8,500 or something like that. So 10 times more, almost spends the full grant. And the reason for that is Google basically does not allow you to show, if you write an ad that is not highly relevant to the keyword you're targeting, and you're sending people to a landing page that's not highly relevant to the keyword you're targeting, Google just won't show the ad. And so you won't spend money. And so that is the wrinkle, is it's an incredible resource if you know how to use it effectively. And if you don't, you actually won't deploy a meaningful percentage of the budget. And that can also be frustrating.
Yeah. And so when it comes to everything that you're sharing on that side with the budget, because you gave a really interesting stat. The average Google ad grant person spending $800. Now, I know why that probably would be with the way that the targeting and inventory works, and also especially if there's more restrictions. But do you mind unpacking that a little bit for the people who are listening? What exactly does that look like? Are they not testing enough of these different keywords or search ads that they could run? Is it specific enough so it's not getting approved? What are you usually seeing in that account?
It's all those things. One of the fundamental realities of this that is probably underappreciated is that the way this works, because you could see an argument, like if you think about when the program was getting approved within Google's team originally, one of the arguments that you can make for why this is not a good idea is that, is this going to influence the cost of ads for other advertisers that are paying real money? And the way that the Google got around that is it actually happens as two auctions. So if someone searches for something, first, any advertiser that's paying real money, first their ads appear as part of a primary auction. And then there's a secondary auction where all of the Google ad grant participants who might want to advertise on that keyword, they then compete. And so if you run your ads on keywords that a lot of people are probably spending real money to reach, so like donate to cancer research, there's a lot of people that are spending real money to target that keyword. Your ads are not going to show. And so there's a very interesting, almost strategic component to this where you have to think about, how can I reach people who are in my target market and who could be great supporters for me, but who are searching for things that don't have immediate commercial intent, such that there's probably not a lot of competition, such that I can reach lots of those people, bring them to my website, and start building a relationship. So that's the nuance. And that's like very underappreciated. Google doesn't, it's common knowledge, like within the universe. And we have a wonderful relationship with the head of the Google Ad Grant program, who's fantastic. It would be, most nonprofits are probably not aware of that technical dynamic, and it deeply informs how you have to think about it strategically, which is underappreciated.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that makes a lot of sense to understand that there's different auctions going on. And it also makes it more fair for the people that are going and paying the direct ad dollars as well, while also still giving the ability to have the Google ad grant appear and people to be able to click. So you're not directly bidding up the other other auction and the clicks, which the average person might not think about, but the people that are running a lot of ads, you and I or whoever, might think about that, especially if they're targeting similar keywords that are advertising. Maybe a charity wants to go beyond the area, or there's businesses that kind of fall in the same line. So that's actually really good to know. I did not know some of that aspect as well, because again, I play more on the YouTube ad side and looking at that. And just a little disclaimer, and you kind of alluded to this already, Grant, but one of the questions a lot of people ask, especially you might be thinking right now, because I talk about the YouTube ad side, is unfortunately, you cannot use the Google Ad Grant for YouTube ads. Now, I know, Grant, you know the people at Google Ads grants, I've definitely had quite a few people asking, or who are, charities over the years, right, asking about that. Do you think that's ever on the horizon, as a quick aside, and then we'll get back to the best practice?
I think there's a chance. We've had discussions about this exact topic. There is inventory, so it would potentially, the discussions we've heard have been around potentially could it be text ads that appear within YouTube? So maybe non-video
Yeah.
ads, but could there be a text ad component that's someday open to the Google Ad Grant? We'll see. I wouldn't be shocked if it did happen. I wouldn't be shocked if it didn't happen. Who knows? But it's a topic of discussion and something that we have been, advocating for as well, because YouTube is a fantastic resource for nonprofits and something that currently the Google Ad Grant doesn't interface with at all.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because I know you can now, earmark videos for specific nonprofit donations, like on YouTube. So an individual creator can do that.
Correct.
So that would be really interesting if there was a way to have a donate button appear on different channels in that aspect. Although the other thing, and we'll get a little bit nerdier for a second, then we'll zoom back out. We'll talk about some of the best practices, some of those things. But one of the things I love about the Marketing Minds podcast, we could dive deep, but then we could also pull back and talk high level. So diving a little bit deeper, one of the reasons that likely is because on Google search, Google doesn't have to pay publishers or content creators. So on YouTube, they're actually giving a split of that revenue in a 45-55 split. So they're giving actually a little bit more to these content creators on YouTube. That's how YouTubers are making their funds, making that money from YouTube. But if they were to do that, then Google actually has to pay out of their pocket to the content creator, which is different than with Google search, where it's just kind of Google, from one pocket into the other, it's within Google, or they might not even need to do that, however they do their books. So I think that also makes a lot of sense for why, at least in my view, and I'm not sure if you'd add to that, but that's kind of what I'm thinking on that side.
Well, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Because they would only do it on owned and operated properties.
Yes.
For example, why they would never do it as part of AdSense or Google Display Network, because you'd have to pay the publishers. So
Exactly. So that, publishers, and then on YouTube as well. All right. So taking a step back to talk about the actual Google Ad grants, we'll talk about shortly how the application process works, some of the challenges, some of the different things, also how you help people, because I know that's the big aspect of what you do at Nonprofit Megaphone. So we'll definitely talk about that. But before we get into that, in terms of the ad itself, what are some of the practices behind actually crafting an ad? Where are you sending people? Are you sending them to landing pages? Are you sending them specifically to, a donation page or to the home page? What's the strategy? What doesn't work as well, and what does work well based on all the clients that you've supported?
Yeah. So it's interesting. It's much less common sending people to landing pages. It's also much less common sending people to homepage. There's typically, if we think about an example client, so let's say, and this is an organization type that works very well with Google Ad Grant, is someone has a humane society where their goal is getting, let's just say, dogs adopted into long-term homes. And so we would be running ads on keywords like adopt a dog, adopt a cat, and lots of, hundreds of other things, including both direct sort of quote transactional intent, like adopt a dog, which is great because there's not going to be a lot of for-profit advertisers on specifically adopt a dog as a keyword, which is a great place for the Google Ad Grant to play. And then there are also sort of more informational queries where maybe we're sending people to blog posts or resource articles, people who are considering adopting an animal and thinking about like, what does it cost, or what are the requirements for your home environment, what kind of time commitment is involved as part of the application process. There are lots of keywords that people are probably searching for as they do research related to a decision like that, and so we're sending people to whatever page on the website is most likely to answer that question as directly as possible. Because if we don't do that, Google won't show the ad within the ad grant program because it deems it to be irrelevant. For example, if we had all those beautiful keywords and we sent them all to the homepage, Google just wouldn't show the ad. It would just be like, nope, clearly irrelevant. We're not going to do that. And so that's part of how we work with and help nonprofits, is basically looking at every single page of their website and thinking about what are all the different keywords that would maybe be related to the question that this page is answering. And let's just run ads on all of them. And then, let's first deploy as much of the ad grant as possible. And then if we get to the point where we're maxing out, then we can start pruning away and focusing more on pages that are driving more near-term conversions and so forth. In many ways, it's the opposite of a traditional pay-per-click ad approach where you start out super narrow and then slowly expand. In this case, you do the reverse.
Yeah, so it's not going to be so does that mean that it's not as conversion optimized? Like, what are some of the targeting capabilities that you have? Obviously, the keyword side, but also optimization capabilities you have with these Google Ad Grant campaigns.
So Google forces you. This is there's a number of compliance rules that are required to run your ad grant, because if you basically continuously break the rules, Google will suspend your ad grant account because you're not following the rules.
Yeah.
One of the rules is that you have to have conversions tracking set up, and the vast majority of nonprofits do this with Google Analytics and Google Tag Manager. So for our Humane Society example, maybe it's like submitting an adoption request form would be a conversion. Maybe like downloading a future pet parent resource packet would be a conversion, and so forth. Those things have to be tracked in Google Analytics or Google Tag Manager. That data has to be connected to the Google Ads platform, and you have to give it a value. And then you are supposed to use a conversion optimized bidding strategy. We're getting into the nerdiness again, but a strategy where you're basically telling Google, this is what we're trying to achieve, and bid more aggressively on keywords or individual searchers that are more likely to actually do this conversion action.
Okay, great. So you can still optimize, even though you're sending them to value-based content, which makes sense, and that's also how you're going to drive the conversion anyways. That's relevant to the search query, so that aligns, relevant to the search query. Then it might be value-based, and then a adopt a pet form or a donation form. Now, have you seen just that? More of the lead-based ads are performing better than it maybe if they're going for donations. Like, what have you kind of seen? Have you tested video on the page versus not? I know this is a little nuanced, but I'm always curious some of these questions. To understand what you're seeing.
It depends wildly. So, a nonprofit may have a whole host of goals. Obviously, donations are always valuable. Sometimes volunteers are valuable, and recruiting people for that is important. Sometimes there's a specific outcome, like adopting a pet, or like if I'm a museum, I'm trying to sell tickets, or I'm a concert venue, I'm trying to sell tickets. So there's always a whole host of conversions, but there's also sort of non-traditional conversions. If I'm an advocacy organization, maybe I'm trying to get people to sign a petition or to watch a video that has some documentary research that we've done on a particular issue. And so typically, we would set up every single one of those things as conversions. And then whatever is most important to the nonprofit organization, one, we'd focus our ad efforts on things related to that. And two, we can tweak the values to sort of teach the Google optimization algorithm, even though it would seem like, maybe you think that there are organizations for whom, as strange as it sounds, donations are not the primary goal. It's something like, we want to get as many people as possible to watch this video because it has important research that we did about an issue. And that is the thing. And we actually know that if people watch that video, they'll probably become more invested and donations will probably follow. So it's all over the place. And we've had much less success sending people to like a traditional landing page than you'd ever expect. And we can talk about the psychology of that and our theories as to why that's the case, but that has been the experience.
Makes sense. And it actually just made me think of a thought that I had too, is, kind of the types of organizations, because there's such a broad possibility. So I'm curious to ask about a couple of other types. So I think the thing that even I have fallen into this and thinking about is more specifically kind of charities, right? So the example you gave, helping people understand like adoption charities, like, adopting a new pet or donating to people in need, giving food or different things. But it sounds like also within the realm of 501c3, there's other areas too. So would this also fall under, like community organizations? So like that's a 501c3. You mentioned like a venue, right? Like maybe a local town, venue that, serves the town and they might have like different performing arts things. And then, do churches also fall under this too? Like what do you kind of see on that side of things?
Yeah, the 501c3 qualification is far broader than people maybe realize. So we think about, I know I should know this off the top of my head, but like 8 or 9 categories of organizations that can be often a great fit for the Google Ad Grant. So animal organizations basically always do well. There's a lot of people that search for animal related causes, and actually relatively few organizations compared to the number of people that are searching. Anything related to the environment has a similar dynamic where lots of people interested, actually relatively few organizations, and so they all do very well. Performing arts, which would be maybe a more common expression of like the local venue. It's I'm an orchestra, I'm a theater company or whatever, does great. Museums, aquariums, things like that do extremely well. There's all kinds of organizations that work like with kids or are related to education or are related to economic empowerment of various groups or communities. Religious organizations do qualify, including churches or other houses of worship. Houses of worship they have to have gone through the 501c3 registration process. Like if you're a church, you don't have to do that because you're tax exempt by default. Most have gone through the registration process, and so then you're eligible. But all kinds of like international development, community organizations like Rotary International is a wonderful client that we've been honored to work with for years and years. And so it's all over the board, and it's actually much broader than advocacy organizations, we like health disease related organizations that are maybe helping support research or creating communities of people that have a specific condition. All these do like extremely well on average with the ad grant, which is wonderful.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And exactly, I think just as you were talking there and before, it was opening my mind to how many different types of organizations you're able to support. And so what I'm curious about is what are some of the results or case studies? You may or may not be able to speak to specific unless you have some, which of course it's always cool to dive into. But what are some of the different things that you're seeing, either from a broader general sense, or if you have specific case studies you can reference? What do you see with these grants in terms of outcomes, whether they be people signing up, people getting a ticket to a local venue, or direct donations? What are you typically seeing?
Yeah, typical outcomes are ticket sales are great. Like if you're a ticket selling nonprofit, the Google Ad Grant is an awesome opportunity because there are a lot of people and there are a lot of creative ways to approach it. You run ads on like date night ideas this weekend and, run those ads to your page for a concert that you have this weekend. There's lots of creative ways to do it. So ticket sales are fantastic. Animal adoptions are fantastic. We've had great success with membership organizations. So like Rotary International or like used to be called Boy Scouts of America, now called Scouting America, of having people participate sort of in your programs and curriculum and so forth. Advocacy is great. There's just because advocacy organizations tend to have great resources on their website, whether it's videos or downloadable or just written blog articles that often a lot of people are searching for. And that's enormously helpful. I've had a lot of success helping people build their email lists in meaningful ways, typically not by advertising. Like no one Googles join nonprofit email list, but they Google something that they're passionate about, that's related, and then there's email capture on the website, but not as like a standalone landing page. It's great. The ad grant is a great resource as well for capturing periodic moments in time where there's just like a lot of interest about something. There's an organization called UNCF, which supports historically Black colleges and universities. And there have been moments in time, you can probably imagine, where there's been a ton of interest in that, and they've just experienced enormous donation volumes through the Google Ad Grant because a lot of people wanted to contribute to a cause like that. And that is, it's interesting because donations are typically the hardest conversion because it's, as we say, it's very rare that someone Googles too much money, need to get rid of it. But if you can thoughtfully connect with an audience that's maybe, that's passionate about what you do, start building a relationship, donations typically follow. But every once in a while, there are circumstances where it's awesome and you get a bunch of donors just immediately. We've had there's a funny example of a nonprofit which provided assistance dogs, still provides assistance dogs for people with conditions where that would be helpful. So think like service animals. Someone in their local community passed away. In their will, they said, I want to give to an animal organization within a certain number of miles of where I lived. The person Googled them, clicked on an ad, reached out through the contract form. It was like a lawyer who was the executor of the state and said like, hey, we have a bequest and we'd like to, and it was a meaningful amount of money. So it's a serendipity that is sometimes hard to predict, but can be very valuable.
Yeah, that's great. And the thing is that's really amazing is Google is giving these funds. So I think that's the thing to loop back and remind ourselves of, especially as you talk about, hey, like any type of advertising, sometimes the results are going to be, really, really big, or especially moments in time, like you talked about. Sometimes, the results are more over time, or there could be spikes at different periods of time, or maybe it's just building awareness and, or getting a ticket or getting people to download a PDF to learn about adopting a new pet, whatever it happens to be. That being said, the thing to remember is that Google is offering this as a free, service where they have the Google Ad Grant. And so it's a really, really cool way to do that. That being said, to actually leverage it the right way, which is a good segment or segue, you have to know how to do it correctly, right? As you said, the average Google Ad Grant participant is using a fraction, less than 10%, maybe 8% of what they have available to them, where it sounds like your average client is over 85% of the total amount of the grant. I'm sure there's plenty of clients that are maxing that out, and there's probably some that pull it down a little bit, just depending on what their goals are, their needs are. Could you walk me through some of the things that you do as part of your process at Nonprofit Megaphone? And we'll also share all the resources below. We'll ask about that too in a second. But what's kind of the process that makes you unique? What are some of the things that people do that are mistakes that don't work as well? I know you already covered a few of those, but maybe some other things. And then what's your process that you found is kind of the formula for helping these nonprofit organizations?
Yeah, we're honored to manage the Google Ad Grant for more nonprofits than anyone else in the world, it's funny. It's like a sort of a small ecosystem, and honored to have been doing it for a while. And it's nice because we can just learn a lot from every organization, many of whom are sort of geographically focused, and it lets us apply the learnings to other geographies. But lots of takeaways. The thing that we think that is the hardest to wrap our mind around is what we talked about earlier, which is you want to start with every page that exists on the nonprofit's website and think about what are the ways that we can potentially connect the topic of this page to a relevant audience that might be searching, and searching at reasonable volume. There's all kinds of keywords that you can run ads on that no one searches for. And so that's probably a waste of time. And there's an interesting gap analysis that you could do. We help some of our clients with content production for their website as well, because there will periodically be large groups of people that are searching for something that the nonprofit doesn't have a good page on their website that directly addresses. And so we can try and advertise topics. We can write ads related to that topic, but they're not going to perform well because the relevance isn't there. And so thinking about how can an organization, whether using a partner or not, just add additional content to the website helps a lot. The conversion tracking is the other piece. Conversion tracking is hard. Like Google Tag Manager is more complicated than it would. Once you know it, you're totally good, but like there's a bit of a steep learning curve there. When an organization comes to us, and let's say they've been trying to use the Google Ad Grant, but haven't been using it particularly successfully, what we typically see is not enough ads, not relevant enough ads. Like they're not thinking about the landing page and the keyword thoughtfully enough, not enough keywords, not using all of the ad extension options like site links and callouts, which are sort of enhancements to the ads that make them larger or more prominent or more effective. And then not using effective conversion tracking, which starves the Google ad algorithm of the data that it needs to optimize effectively on your behalf in terms of what it's bidding. And then the final thing, which is sort of in the category of optimization, is Google allows you, the format is basically headline and description, and Google allows you to provide many headline options and many description options, and it will dynamically mix and match to figure out what would be the best approach. And if we end up having clients that have hundreds and hundreds of ads, each of those ads have 10 headline options and 4 description options, and that just takes forever, but it is the right way to do it, and it's the thing that maximizes results over the long term. So we typically see like, oh, someone has done 15% of the work to truly capture the opportunity here, and we get it. Nonprofits are busy, resources are tight, and there's just often a lot of opportunity left on the table.
Absolutely. And we're going to talk about another golden nugget or two that you have to share in just a second. We always do that towards the end of the podcast, just to reward everybody for listening to the very end. But now's a great time because you talked about, this is what you do at Nonprofit Megaphone, and you're very humble about it, but you just said it yourself. Like you have the largest number of Google Ad Grant clients. So, you truly are the expert at this. And I know, we've met at different events and known each other for a bit here. And just the wealth of knowledge you have around Google Ad Grants is pretty remarkable. And I know you do a lot of great work for the different clients you're working with. So how does your process work? What's the best way for people to get in touch with you, to have your support? And where would you like to send people?
Yeah, when an organization talks to us and says, I want to utilize the Google Ad Grant, what do you recommend? We basically, there's sort of 2 options. Option 1 is you can do it yourself, which just requires a lot of time. It's very doable. It just requires a lot of time. We have wonderful resources on our website that have guides and so forth, because basically we're just like, we want to give you, if that's you, especially if you have no real marketing budget, that's a great option. It's nonprofitmegaphone.com/guide, I believe, redirects you to like a 20-page, very long resource about how it's done. And that's a wonderful starting point. For all Actually, all of our clients and most of the people we talk to say, this is a great resource. I would love for someone to really be focused on it and maximizing it. It's not going to be me. The interface and the universe of Google Ads keeps changing, and I want someone who's just a specialist to make that happen. And so our ideal client is someone who says exactly that, where they say, make the Google Ad Grant successful for me and do it in as little time that I have to spend as humanly possible. And so we do everything from soup to nuts. So if an organization does not have the Google Ad Grant, we will apply for them, get them approved, set everything up. If they do have the grant, but maybe it's been suspended, we'll get it reactivated. If they have the grant, but it's just not working effectively, we will do as much as needed to overhaul the account and get it into the spot where it needs to be performing. We do all the conversion tracking and setup. We build dashboards that you can see that are through a platform called Looker Studio, used to be called Data Studio, that are great for a marketing director, marketing manager, and also even a board member, an executive, to see how is this going. It's updated every night and has all kinds of nice ways that you can slice and dice the data in a very easy format. And then we do calls. We do calls periodically with our clients where we make sure that we're staying in sync with their priorities and new events that they might have coming up, new content that they might be producing. And we're in their account every week, creating ads, optimizing the performance of keywords and targeting and all the different components in a way that we basically want to give a nonprofit the confidence that the opportunity is being fully maximized, and it takes them an hour a month of talking to us or emailing with us, and that's it. That's the goal. It's not perfect for everyone, but the time is often even more of a premium for many nonprofit organizations, and we're happy to help them out.
Amazing. Definitely lots of great opportunities to work with you and get your support, but also the 20-page resource as well, which is amazing. Very value first, even on this podcast here. And by the way, we're gonna do a couple more golden nuggets. I actually want to ask you about some of the things that you see in applying for the Google grant, some of the mistakes. So I was meaning to ask that earlier. So we'll cover that in just a second. We'll close off with any final golden nuggets, but definitely go ahead, click the link down there below. It'll be in the show notes, or if you're watching this on YouTube, in the description, to go ahead and go to Nonprofit Megaphone, take a look at that guide, go ahead and reach out to them if that sounds like you. And there's a lot of opportunities to get grant support. He really is the expert at this, and his team. And then also, before we dive into this next part here, if you are watching, listening to this podcast, you like this podcast, you found it valuable, please make sure that you go over to your favorite podcast platform. Even if you're watching this on YouTube, your favorite podcast platform on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, those are kind of the top two we're focused on right now, but whatever podcast platform you like, subscribe on that platform. And if you liked it, you found it valuable, rate it 5 stars, or give me feedback in the YouTube comments, if there's anything there. But hopefully we're delivering a 5-star experience. That really does help. We're looking to increase the ratings on the different podcast platforms, even if you're watching this on YouTube. So thank you so much. All right. So Grant, so much value, so many incredible pieces. And we'll talk about it if you have any final golden nuggets in a second. But I just realized that I forgot to ask that question I alluded to earlier, which is with applying for the grants. And I know you really help out with that. You also got a full guide. So we'll put all the links below. But with applying for the grant, what are some of the pitfalls you see? And then what are some of the things that actually helps people get approved for that grant in your experience?
I'll explain the process and then touch on the pitfalls. The way it works is you go to google.com/nonprofits and you can sign up for a Google for Nonprofits account. And that is what gives you access to the Google Ad Grant. Also, great other programs. So a Google Workspace for Nonprofits gives you many free licenses for professional Gmail, professional Google Drive, Google Docs. Many organizations have that already, and they don't realize that they actually have a Google for Nonprofits account. And so oftentimes the most tricky part of this whole scenario can be figuring out who within the organization is a Google for Nonprofits admin, because you have to log into Google for Nonprofits, be added as an admin, or work with the person, or add us as an admin, because then it's from the Google for Nonprofits portal that you then apply for the Google Ad Grant. Sometimes as well, people have a Google Ad Grants account. They log into the Google for Nonprofits platform and they see approved for the Google Ad Grant, and it lists an account number, and they don't know who has access to that ad account, because maybe it was an intern who created it 7 years ago and that intern's left and no one can find it. If that is the case, reach out to us, because we can help with that scenario. It's quite tricky, but yes. So you create or you log into your Google for Nonprofits account, and then you create, if you are not yet approved for the Google Ad Grant, you create a Google account that you do not put payment information into. And that's the key. That is one of the easiest ways to mess it up, is if you actually put payment information in, that account can never be approved for the ad grant. You have to create a new account, not put payment information in, and apply for that. So that's the nice thing, is people often ask, if I spend more than $10,000 a month, will I be charged real money? And the answer is no, because you never put payment info in, and Google will not let you spend more than they do it based on a daily budget. It's a long story. So technically you could spend like slightly more than 10 grand, but you'll never be actually charged for that because no payment info is added. And if you do add it, it breaks the whole system and that account can't get approved.
Oh,
but
wow.
That's fine. You just create
this is really, I'm glad I asked right here at the end. These are even more value bombs. The other thing too is another big piece of value, another golden nugget you just shared, is that they can get the Google Workspace for nonprofits. I know some people already have that, but if they don't, that's a big opportunity. And then, okay, so you make sure that you don't include the payment information. And that seems like a pitfall. Make sure you don't do that. And then kind of, I'll have you continue with whatever the next step is in a second. But it sounds like this is a relatively straightforward process. I just had a question that popped up into my head. Do people have to spread out the funds evenly, or if they have a giving area, are they able to spend a little bit more at a specific point in time, or is it really just evenly distributed throughout the month?
It's evenly distributed throughout the month. There's a little bit of ebb and flow that can happen there, but basically the goal is to deploy $329 a day over the course of the month. So you have some fluctuations, like you're going to spend less in February than you are in March because there's fewer days in February. But yes, you can't, even if you wanted to, you can't say, I want to deploy all of it right, on the 3rd of February. It has to be pretty much evenly distributed.
I was pretty sure that would be the case, but I was curious about that too. But I mean, the other thing too is $330 a day, especially for nonprofit organizations, a pretty sizable budget to make some things happen. Okay, so continue. Was there any other steps there? I know so you said you don't put the payment information. What's after that to get it?
So just in the interest of time, there are other steps to set up the account, and the most important or the trickiest is setting up conversion tracking. So you have to make sure that you have Google Analytics on your website. We always recommend Google Tag Manager because it lets you do much more granular conversion tracking as well. You set up conversions, you import those conversions into your ad account, and you do some other setup, which we don't have to bore you with.
Yeah.
But then you basically take that.
Your resource. That's
exactly.
You got a 20-page document, step by step. I do the same thing. I have my YouTube ads PDF too. It's like when I hop on podcasts, like, all right, I'll give you the high level, but you can check out the PDF for everything. So
totally. You don't even have to put in your email. It's just a link to a page. So anyway, it's a good resource.
Love it. We'll link that down below. Any other final things that you want to share as we close out this episode? It's been fantastic.
Yeah, no, thrilled to be here. I'll just close by saying that the ad grant can be there's a large segment of people that haven't heard of the ad grant, but there's also a large segment of people that have tried it and been frustrated. And I just want to say that we would be thrilled to be helpful, or the resources that we have are designed to be helpful, because it really is a wonderful resource if used properly. There are lots of nonprofits that are using it very effectively, and there is hope if you have experience that frustration, and that doesn't have to be the end of the story.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, Grant. This has been an amazing episode of the Marketing Minds podcast. Of course, we'll see you next week on the next episode. And thanks so much again for coming on, Grant. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much.